Today's debate is a very good sign. I think the net zero consensus is beginning to crumble. In my view, we're not in a climate emergency. Climate change is a challenge we can meet. It isn't one that requires us to upend our entire economy and our way of life. Now, today is supposed to be a debate about the economy, and I want to focus on that. For too long, many people have claimed that net zero is good for growth and prosperity, and we've heard that today. I'm sorry, I believe this is nonsense, and I'm going to show you why today. One of the reasons why I'm confident our current approach is harmful is that it requires many normally sensible people, and perhaps some who aren't quite so sensible, to have to believe in a whole series of fallacies, economic fallacies, for their policy to work. And I'll just briefly set some of these out. First of all, the broken window fallacy. We're supposed to believe in the Skidmore report that net zero will make us richer. Well, of course, spending trillions on a new energy system has some economic spin-offs, and it does get you an asset. Just like repairing a broken window funds the glazier and gets you a window back. But your wealth is just the same. And in fact, what we're doing today is creating an actual reduction in wealth. The new asset is actually worse than the old one. The replacement of the current grid with rickety and expensive renewables is not an improvement. It's a massive reduction in productive capacity, malinvestment of the worst kind. Just think of all the genuinely productive projects that could be funded with the trillions we're going to spend over the year. How much real wealth could have been created? Second fallacy, the fallacy of it's all going to be all right on the night. This is a belief that one day we will just solve the problems. We'll solve the storage problem with hydrogen, hydro, batteries, whatever. The view that interconnects will always work well. They'll never export when they're supposed to import. Those to whom we are connected will never think their interests come first. I can tell you I learned from the vaccines saga and France's threats to Jersey in 2021, that you can't rely even on our closest friends when the chips are down. This policy is making us deeply insecure. Third fallacy, the fallacy of self-deception, most obviously on prices and costs. In the real world, I'm sorry, renewables are simply not getting cheaper, and some are eye-wateringly expensive. The existing CFD-funded offshore wind farms have cost over £150 per megawatt hour in current prices this financial year so far. The new projects awarded in AR6 are going to cost over 80 per megawatt hour, when, as my noble friend Lord Lillies pointed out, the market price is around 60. And those figures for renewables ignore the subsidy. They ignore the need for backup and storage. A child can see, surely, that it isn't cheaper to build a renewables grid plus all the backup than just to build effective backup and forget about the renewables. Fourth fallacy, the fallacy that jobs are a benefit, not a cost. Net zero proponents paint this glowing picture of hundreds of thousands of new green jobs. But if the energy system requires many more people than now, how is that making the country more productive? If you believe that, you must think we could make ourselves wealthier by sending everyone back into the fields to work on the land. We want the fewest, the most highly productive jobs possible, like those we already have in the oil and gas industry, but jobs which this government is gradually extinguishing. Fifth fallacy, the fallacy of the infinite availability of resources. In this world, in the net zero world, there's always lots of capital waiting to be used. We always have enough workers. There are no linkages or timing problems for proper sequencing. Foreigners are always willing to lend to the UK. UK consumers are always happy to save instead of consume. Massive projects, such as insulating every home in the UK or doubling the capacity of the energy grid, can be undertaken apparently without any resource constraints or knock-on effects in the wider economy. To put it charitably, that's not a realistic depiction of the world in which we live. And finally, my lords, there's the industrial policy fallacy. The view that the government knows best, that it can pick the technologies, the subsidies and the targets to get us to net zero, the ineffective boilers and heat pumps, the expensive EVs, the windmills, the technology that was last cutting edge in this country under Henry II. I think we can be confident that any project pursued in this way is going to be a drag on the economy. All economic theory tells us so. Now, I believe in the long-standing conservative principles, seemingly so uncertainly held in much of my party nowadays: economic freedom, decentralised decision-taking, incentives for entrepreneurs, economic experimentation. Yet the net zero approach we've chosen is requiring us to junk all this in favour of greater control and restrictions of Soviet-style production targets, policies we believe are wrong in any area except when it comes to net zero. And I urge my colleagues who support net zero on these benches to reflect. If you're a conservative and your policy forces you to implement socialism, then just maybe it's a bad policy. The truth is, all of this can only have one consequence for the economy, which is to make it less productive and slower growing as it increasingly is. The only way out is to unwind, invest in productive energy, gas and nuclear, and lots of it, stop picking winners, roll back the subsidies and let the market decide. Now, I'd have more sympathy with net zero proponents if, and some have been today, they're honest about this. If they said, this is going to cost you, we've got to do it anyway, then at least it would focus minds and could have a real debate about whether the ends justified the means, not the fantasy debate we're currently in, where everything is for the best and everything would turn out right. On net zero, we need a bit more Hayek and a bit less Candide.